The Loose Women studio buzzed with its usual mid-morning energy, warm lights, cheerful chatter, and the faint rustle of cue cards being shuffled just off camera. The audience clapped on command as the familiar theme music faded, and the panel smiled into the lens. On paper, it was supposed to be another lively but manageable episode. In reality, it was the calm before a storm. Piers Morgan sat in the guest chair with his trademark half-smile, jacket perfectly pressed, eyes alert as if already anticipating battle. He had been invited to promote his latest media venture, but everyone in the room knew that promotions were rarely the reason Piers Morgan appeared on daytime television. Controversy followed him like a shadow, and Loose Women, known for its unapologetically honest debates, was fertile ground. Denise Welch sat opposite him on the panel, arms relaxed but posture firm. She had sparred with high-profile guests before, but something about Morgan's presence today felt different. There was an edge in the air, a subtle tightening in the smiles exchanged before the cameras went live. "Welcome back," the host began brightly. "We're joined today by broadcaster and columnist Piers Morgan." Applause erupted. Piers nodded graciously, soaking it in. "Piers," the host continued, "you're never far from headlines. Do you ever feel misunderstood by the public?" Morgan leaned forward slightly, sensing an opening. "I think people prefer outrage to nuance," he replied smoothly. "If you say something honest these days, someone's bound to take offense." Denise raised an eyebrow. The audience noticed. Denise interjected calmly, "People are tired of honesty being used as an excuse for cruelty." A ripple of murmurs spread across the studio. Piers turned to her, smile tightening. "Cruelty," he echoed. "Denise, disagreeing with someone isn't cruelty. It's debate." Denise met his gaze without flinching. "Debate is fine, but repeatedly targeting people, especially women, and then dismissing their reactions as oversensitivity. That's something else entirely." The host attempted to steer things gently. "Well, that's exactly why we wanted you here, different perspectives." But Piers had already locked in. "I find it fascinating," he said, voice sharpening, "that people on shows like this claim to champion free expression, yet only when it aligns with their worldview." Denise folded her hands. "That's not fair, Piers. Free expression doesn't mean freedom from consequences." The audience applauded softly. Piers glanced around, clearly registering the shift in energy. "Consequences like being shouted down," he shot back, "or having your character questioned because you don't toe the approved line." Denise's patience thinned, though her tone remained measured. "Your character is questioned because of your behavior, not your opinions." The host laughed nervously. "All right, let's keep things civil." But the spark had already ignited. Piers leaned back, crossing his arms. "I've been called many things for simply saying what millions think but are too afraid to say." Denise shook her head. "No, Piers. You say what you think, very loudly, and then frame yourself as a martyr when people respond." A loud "ooh" rose from the audience. For a brief moment, Piers said nothing. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing, not in anger exactly, but calculation. Then he leaned forward again. "Let me ask you something, Denise," he said. "Do you genuinely believe public discourse is better now that people are constantly policing language and intent?" Denise didn't hesitate. "I think it's better when people are held accountable for the impact of their words." "And who decides that impact?" Piers snapped. "You. Twitter. Empathy decides," Denise replied. "Something you often seem to mock." The studio fell silent. Even the host froze, sensing the line had been crossed. Piers let out a short laugh. "Empathy. I've spent decades in journalism. I've seen real hardship. What I don't have patience for is performative outrage." Denise's voice hardened. "And I don't have patience for powerful men dismissing harm because it inconveniences them." The host jumped in. Okay, let's take a breath." But Piers turned fully toward Denise now, ignoring the cue. "You see, this is the problem," he said. "You reduce complex arguments to moral grandstanding." Denise leaned forward, mirroring his posture. "And you reduce people's lived experiences to talking points." The applause this time was louder, more confident. Piers glanced toward the audience again, irritation flickering across his face. "This show," he said, gesturing around him, "pretends to be about open conversation. But the moment someone challenges the prevailing narrative, they're attacked." Denise stood her ground. "No, Piers, you're not being attacked. You're being challenged, and you don't like it." A producer's voice crackled faintly through the host's earpiece. "Let's move on," the host said firmly. "We've got a break coming up." But Piers shook his head. "No, actually, I think this is worth finishing." Denise exhaled slowly. "That's exactly it. You always need the last word. And you always need the moral high ground," Piers retorted. The host tried again. "Piers." He waved her off. "No, let me speak." That was the moment the room shifted. The easy banter of daytime TV evaporated, replaced by a tension so thick it felt physical. Denise's voice dropped, calm but unmistakably firm. "This isn't your show, Piers." A beat. Piers stared at her, incredulous. "Excuse me. This isn't your platform to dominate," she continued. "You were invited as a guest, not to lecture everyone in the room." The audience erupted in applause. Piers, face flushed. "So now I'm being told to sit down and shut up," he said sharply. "No," Denise replied. "You're being asked to listen." That word, listen, seemed to land like an insult. Piers rose slightly from his chair. "I've listened to this sanctimony for years." The host stood halfway, panic evident. "Piers, please." A producer appeared at the edge of the set, signaling urgently. Denise looked directly at him. "If you can't have a conversation without talking over women, maybe this isn't the right space for you." The studio went dead quiet. Piers straightened fully now, adjusting his jacket. "I don't need lessons in conversation from anyone." Another producer stepped closer. The host swallowed. "Piers, we're going to take a break." Piers laughed, humorless. "Of course you are." He turned toward Denise one last time. "Enjoy your echo chamber." Denise didn't raise her voice. "Enjoy leaving." For a second, it wasn't clear if it was a joke or a challenge. Then the decision was made for him. "Piers," the producer said quietly but firmly, "we're ending your segment." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Piers stared, disbelief giving way to fury. Then, with a sharp nod, he picked up his jacket. "Fine," he said. "This tells everyone exactly what kind of show this is." As he walked off set, the cameras cut to the host's stunned expression. Denise sat back down slowly, hands trembling just slightly beneath the table. The red light blinked off. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted, whispered arguments, frantic phone calls, and stunned crew members replaying the moment in their heads. On set, Denise stared at the empty chair across from her, knowing this confrontation would not end when the episode did. Outside the studio, Piers Morgan disappeared down the corridor, already pulling out his phone. The story had only just begun. The corridor outside. The Loose Women studio felt colder than usual as Piers Morgan strode away from the set, his footsteps echoing against the polished floor. A junior runner pressed herself against the wall to avoid eye contact. No one spoke. Everyone knew better. Piers' jaw was clenched, his phone already glowing in his hand as notifications began pouring in. Inside the studio, the atmosphere was equally tense, but quieter. Denise Welch sat motionless for a moment, eyes fixed on the empty guest chair. The host exhaled deeply and removed her earpiece as the off-air sign dimmed. "Well," she muttered, forcing a small smile that escalated. Denise nodded slowly. "It always does with him." A producer approached, clipboard clutched tightly. "Denise, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice betrayed exhaustion more than victory. "But let's not pretend this was unexpected." Behind the scenes, the production team scrambled. Social media monitors were already lighting up. Clips of the confrontation, some leaked by audience members, others captured by studio feeds, were spreading at alarming speed. Hashtags were forming faster than anyone could track. Hashtag Loose Women Clash. Hashtag Denise Welch. Hashtag Piers Morgan Walkout. Within minutes, the confrontation had escaped the studio and entered the digital bloodstream. The first shot fired. Piers didn't wait long. Still in the car park, he posted the first message. "Just been kicked off Loose Women for daring to challenge groupthink. Apparently, strong opinions aren't welcome when they don't fit the approved narrative." The post exploded. Supporters flooded in, praising him for standing his ground and exposing hypocrisy. Critics were just as loud, calling his behavior disrespectful, aggressive, and emblematic of everything Denise had accused him of being. Inside the studio, Denise's phone buzzed relentlessly. She didn't check it. "I'm not engaging today," she told the host quietly. "Let it breathe." But the show couldn't breathe. The remaining panel finished the episode with forced smiles and carefully neutral conversations, all while knowing that nothing they said would matter as much as what had already happened. Media frenzy. By the afternoon, news sites had picked up the story. Piers Morgan removed from Loose Women set after on-air clash. Pundits dissected every second of footage. Body language experts weighed in. Former colleagues shared cryptic comments. Some defended Piers' right to speak freely, others praised the show for finally drawing a line. Denise watched none of it. Instead, she sat at home with a cup of tea gone cold in her hands, replaying the confrontation in her mind, not with triumph but with unease. "I didn't want it to end like that," she admitted later to a friend on the phone. "But I wasn't going to be talked over. Not again. Not on my own show." Damage control. The next morning, Loose Women executives held an emergency meeting. Ratings projections, brand reputation, sponsor concerns, everything was on the table. "We didn't kick him off for his opinions," one executive insisted. "We removed him because he refused to respect the format and the panel. And because he ignored the host," another added. "That's the key." A carefully worded statement was drafted and released. Loose Women is committed to open discussion built on mutual respect. Yesterday's segment ended early after our guest repeatedly disregarded the show's guidelines. "We stand by our panel and production team." It was firm, polite, unyielding. Piers responded within minutes. Translation: "We like debate, but only when we control it." Denise speaks. For nearly 24 hours, Denise Welch stayed silent. When she finally spoke, it wasn't in anger, it was in reflection. She posted a short message. "Disagreement is healthy. Disrespect is not. I won't apologize for asking to be heard." That single sentence shifted the tone. Women across media shared their own experiences, being interrupted, dismissed, talked over. Journalists, presenters, and viewers alike echoed her words. What had started as a celebrity clash began evolving into a broader conversation. Piers noticed the shift, and didn't like it. Behind closed doors. Privately, Piers was furious, but also calculating. He'd weathered storms before. This one felt different. "They're turning this into a gender issue," he snapped during a phone call with an ally. That's not what happened. But the narrative had already grown beyond his control. Producers from other shows hesitated. Invitations slowed. The controversy was good for clicks, but risky for live television. Meanwhile, Denise received quiet messages of support from unexpected places. Former guests, crew members, even a rival presenter sent a note that simply read, "About time someone said it." The turning point. A week later, Piers broke his silence with a long-form interview on his own platform. He framed the incident as censorship, accused daytime television of cowardice, and singled out Denise's comments as personal rather than professional. Denise watched a clip this time. She sighed, not in defeat, but in clarity. "He still doesn't get it," she said softly. When she was later asked if she'd debate him again, her answer was simple. "I would," Denise said. "But only if he's willing to listen as much as he speaks." The line made headlines. Aftermath. The storm slowly began to settle, though the ripples remained. Loose Women saw a spike in viewership. The episode became one of the most discussed of the year. Denise Welch emerged not as a provocateur, but as a figure of quiet firmness, someone who had drawn a boundary without shouting. Piers Morgan moved on to the next controversy, as he always did, but this one lingered. Not because he'd lost a platform, but because for once, he hadn't controlled the room. And that, more than being kicked off a show, was what truly unsettled him. In the end, the confrontation wasn't about one argument or one episode. It was about who gets to speak, who gets to interrupt, and who finally says, "Enough."